Welcome back. We're here with Sarah Kessler. She's an editor at Quartz. And today we will be talking mostly about her book, Gigged, which is about the gig economy and something that she has researched for many years now. And I guess that's something I would like to start with, because this is something I think you already covered as a journalist when gig economy wasn't even a proper word or term yet. And back in 2014, you actually spent a month doing all kinds of like odd jobs through these gig economy apps, such as I think TaskRabbit, Postmate, stuff like that. Am I correct? What was it like?
Yeah, so kind of when I first got introduced to it was probably more around 2010, where this term gig economy didn't really exist, but I was getting all these pitches from startups that were like, hey, we've like solved all the problems with the job and we've ended unemployment because now you can just press a button and you can get work wherever you want, whenever you want, and you can do what you love and raise your children and everything's going to be wonderful now. So I thought that sounds great. And then a couple years later, when I was a writer at Fast Company for a story, I was like, okay, I'm going to try to beat the minimum wage by signing up for like 30 of these and seeing if I can make that dream come true. And it turns out, no, I am a college-educated person who like writes persuasively for a living, and I cannot get enough people to hire me in the gig economy to make minimum wage or balance kind of all the jobs together.
So it's actually a pretty bleak outcome of your first experiment with the gig economy in that sense.
At the time, like kind of the whole narrative around it was still very much like, now you can do whatever you want, and this is going to end unemployment. Like the New York Times was writing opinion articles about how this was going to help end the recession and stuff like that. So it was kind of like different than what people were saying at the time about the gig economy.
Yeah, but this was 5 years ago.
Yes, it was.
What would be your current stance on the gig economy? What has changed, maybe?
So then after kind of that article came out, I spent the next like 3 or 4 years following people who are working in the gig economy and not just doing it for an article. And they were kind of positioned at all different places. So I followed a nonprofit that was trying to like use the gig economy as a way to lift people out of poverty. I also followed like a software programmer who was just out of college and making $100,000 a year. Decided to go in the gig economy. So I kind of got like a more realistic picture of like how this is different for different people, and we tend to talk about it like it's the same thing, but there's actually many different things happening, and some of them are good and some of them could be better.
Yeah, so but if I understand correctly, in a way you also discovered a few more sort of positive stories when it comes to gig economy, like the programmer who's able to actually make a lot of money because he's doing it through this structure.
Yeah, so the main like downsides of the gig economy are the holes in kind of your protections as a worker and like the lack of security, but there's a certain like level of freelancing where you don't really experience that feeling of a lack of security, and it happens when you make a lot of money. So like if you can save a year's worth of living expenses, it's not really a big deal if you get sick and can't work for a week. You know, you're still going to be able to buy groceries. You can still buy your health insurance if you're making $100,000 a year, and you can enjoy kind of all the flexibility and freedom that comes with freelancing without worrying about kind of the insecurity. And often you also have true control over your work.
Yeah, because I feel like the debate often seems to focus on freedom, flexibility on the one side versus stability, security on the other. But actually, I don't think they necessarily would have to be mutually exclusive. When you look at a company structure or long-time employment, you can also have flexibility, right?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. If you're an employee, there's no reason that your employer can't give you flexibility. Like there's no laws that says that can't happen. So that is kind of a red herring. At the same time, like some people who freelance consider it more secure than working for one employer because they have multiple employers. So if one of them has layoffs, they still have others. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I hadn't even thought of that, but yeah. So in a way, it's also more secure. You mean to have different options as a worker?
It can be, yeah. Depending on who you are, and also like how much autonomy you actually have. Yeah.
And do you think this should be regulated more? I mean, does policy need to catch up sort of on the increasing size of the gig economy right now?
Yeah, I think that is like the main the main thing. Like, it's not like inherently a bad way to work. It's just we don't have any of the same labor protections or like standards that we do for employment as we know it as like the full-time job. So there's some like catching up to do to get us there.
And what would be your advice to, let's say, someone who just finished college and is looking to sort of start their career? Would you advise them to start a job to start gigging, basically, or to maybe look for a full-time, long-term employment situation?
I think it depends who you are. If you're like some people use kind of freelance projects as a way to build a portfolio that can then get them hired for a job that they wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. And then some people, it's like not the thing for them. They don't like having the responsibility to always be finding work, or they like going into an office every day. So I don't know if there's like one answer for that.
Depends on the person, and what you're looking for.
As unsatisfying as that is, yes.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. But I was just sort of thinking, depending on what your experience is, and maybe even for people that are older and for some reason have lost their jobs, I mean, they could maybe try to become a freelancer because they do have that experience. But I think on the other hand, it's still it's flexible, but it's not as secure financially.
And there's a difference between being a freelancer by choice and being kind of forced to be a freelancer who's really doing the job of an employee, which I heard a lot from a lot of people after I wrote the book who were like, yeah, like I got fired from my employer and then they hired me back as a freelancer to do exactly the same things I was doing as an employee. Or there are entire industries where there's kind of only freelance work now because people are using it as a way to save money. So like in journalism, for instance, you'll see ads for jobs that are like, freelance social media coordinator must be available from 9 to 5. We'll manage 4 people, must have an ingrained sense of our mission. And that's not really freelancing. Yeah.
Yeah, but people still take those jobs.
Yeah, that's not paying you health insurance. It's different.
Oh, yeah. So you would advise against doing that, at least.
Well, sometimes, I mean, I would advise it should be illegal, and kind of our laws, at least in the United States and in a lot of countries, make it difficult to find like the strict legal definition of what an employee is, but it's like the intention of having like a different category of worker with different responsibilities is that worker will actually be autonomous and be a freelancer. So you see kind of a lot of employers cheating because it's cheaper to hire freelancers.
Yeah. The gig economy situation, I think, is one, at least looking from certain perspectives, threat to the job market. There's also automation, AI. Mm-hmm. How do the two sort of tie in together? Do they worsen each other, or maybe can they benefit from each other in a way?
I mean, you can go either way. There's like a dystopian situation where like the automation is handing off like little bits of human tasks to like a whole crowd of people that all like use their human intelligence to do the one thing the computer can't do, and get paid 2 cents. There's also like an idea that like humans won't have to do work that's not like to their highest intelligence. Like they won't have to transcribe interviews or do whatever it is that's like the repetitive pain about whatever their job is. Sure. Because automation will do it.
Yeah, so there's always going to be those tasks that no one wants to do, and in that sense, automation is a good thing to take over.
Maybe. It depends which version you want to go. There's people who would argue like this is going to make all jobs better because we don't have to do boring stuff, and then there are people who argue like this is going to make all jobs disappear because the computers are going to do everything. And we don't know because it's the future.
And maybe last question, when we do talk about the future of the job market, how do you see that? I mean, where do you think we're headed? Are we all becoming gig workers at some point? Or
I don't think we all are becoming gig workers, but I don't think it has to be all of us in order to be important. Like if you think about the impact that something like e-commerce has had on shopping, it's still like, I don't remember the exact number, but it's less than 15% of shopping is e-commerce, but that's still like a very important transformative thing. So yeah, I think it'll be significant.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time.